After the sports thing, as you're running through high school, I guess what kind of evolves next for you? Like, was you leave the high school era?
So I dropped out like 4 months before I was supposed to graduate. Got kicked out. I turned 18, and I was like, all right, I'm grown. Started doing the job thing. Got my GED. Um, Linked up with some people here in Hoptown that were doing music, just kind of on the off chance. I was living with a guy I used to go to school with, and his brother had a studio, and we all used to fuck off and freestyle and just do dumb shit, and everybody kind of I guess could kind of see what I wasn't really seeing at the time. It was just kind of, oh, fun to do. My buddy was like, hey man, my brother's got a studio. You should go over there, and y'all should link up. So I went over there and did some music with him, and it was one of those. We met up. He kind of started playing a beat. We kind of all conversated. It was me, him, and his brother. We were all standing in there. Um, he's like, "Oh man," he's like, "You've seen Hustle and Flow, right?" And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Oh, you
What?
remember? You remember?" Yeah, of course, And I was like, "Yeah, man." He's like, "You remember that whoop that trick, right?" And I was like, "Yeah, yeah." He's like, "All right, watch this." So he grabs the keyboard and he started playing it on the keyboard. And of course, yeah, of course, we were all, been smoking and doing our thing that day, and we just kind of start this little cipher, man. And so we did that for like 20, 30 minutes, and that was fun. And then we're like, hey, man, we're going to do a track. So we all sat down and wrote some verses together and slapped together, hindsight looking back at it. It was a very sloppy, not very well thought out track. But, at that moment, like I wrote my verse and I thought it was the greatest shit I had ever wrote, and it was like, all right, I'm gonna go record it. And of course, it took a little while to get it right and shit. And that minute, that first time I stepped in front of that mic, man, like I've said it before and I'll say it again, I felt like I was at home, man. Like that right then was when I knew music was really, you know, who I am. Like I don't know, it was all like I said, it was crazy how it all panned out. I went to school with the dude, but him and I were never really cool. It just wound up some crazy situation. We lived together outside of high school. His brother had a studio. One thing led to another type.
Yo, Hustle and Flow is a really good movie. that
Fucking
that's
dope movie.
that scene, and I didn't even think about this for years. When I was like what 14, 15, I think when that shit came out or whatever. I saw it a little bit later on though, and I remember watching that scene, and it was like one of the first times because like YouTube hadn't really popped yet, so it was one of the first times I ever saw somebody like actually put a beat together, and then they like do the song in like that room. And that is one of
Yeah,
those
dude.
pivotal moments where I'm like, yo, I'm gonna be a rapper. It was watching that scene in Hustle and Flow.
Dude, I remember just watching that movie, and like I said, that was before all that shit. Just music, man, like, throughout my teenage years, like I said, up until I left high school, it was the same thing, 24/7. You saw me with headphones on, like listening to whatever it might have been. And, it just so happened, like I said, everything lined out. And it was just crazy that was his go to. Like, I can make that beat on the keyboard right quick. And he just started, and
That's
I don't
wild.
know.
So y'all did a cipher, made the backroom
Yeah.
track in your fucking basement with whatever, and you guys had mics and
Yeah.
shit.
Yeah, he had like so he had it set up in his room, and he had like this little side room where he had the little mic and all that stuff set up. And he had all his keyboard and all that stuff, man, and we all just sat right in there on, like, I want to say there were the little camping chairs, bro. Like we all camped out with the little notebooks, and everybody's ripping out a piece of paper and finding something to write on, and we all slapped these verses together and went and recorded them. And I'm pretty sure if I dove deep enough down the wormhole, I may be able to find that track somewhere. I wouldn't guarantee it, but yeah, it was a crazy, like, eh, spur of the moment, I guess. Like me, him, and I can't remember the other kid's name that was there, but it was us three.
So you had the guy who you can't remember, next man's from school, this whole studio set up. You make this organic,
Yeah,
like spur of the moment track, and that launches into a whole thing.
yeah. So I wound up that guy that had the studio. That's who I wound up working with before I ever became obsolete, because there's that whole flip side to this thing too that we
What was your
hadn't
name
dove
back then?
into. Two Face. I've actually got it. It's still tattooed on my forearms, man. I did it for 10, almost 11 years doing it that way. Long story short, we can dive into that a little bit if you want, but it's kind of one of those. Life happened. We went, separate ways. Had kids, did all that good shit, and it is
Well, I
what it
mean,
is. No
we
hard
should,
feelings.
but in the middle part, so like, I mean, the, I don't usually like to go into the dramatic negative parts people don't want to share
Oh, you're
about, but
good.
like the other part of it where like you go through being two-faced, I mean, that's a whole part of your life still is that it should be just,
Yeah,
described.
it was. So we did like in total. I want to say it was like two, maybe three albums worth of stuff. I did some music with some other guys throughout that time. We did. That's why I said, man, like a handful of shows. Like it wasn't even enough. I can remember two or three of them, like off the top of my head if I thought hard enough about it. But we were more just like recording a bunch of tracks and putting out a bunch of shit, thinking,
And how are you
flood the
releasing them?
masses, I guess. Huh?
How did you release them?
At the time, we were doing CDs, and then right about that time, I think was when he started learning about the what was it, DatPiff, I think it was the mixtape site. So we used that just to upload the albums that we had made, and just did it that way after we had tried to push as many physical copies as we could with the stuff.
Did you do well with the pushing physicals? Like, what's, because I don't know a lot about the Kentucky market,
Uh,
right? So it's like a whole
the
different.
first album we did pretty well with the first album, but we had built up like that's the thing. Him and I at one point were doing really well around here. Like we had quite a good following around here, and like people really kind of rocking with us. So when we dropped the album,
So
it was easy to
how did
get.
you do that without performing shows?
Well, we that's why I said, man, he was probably 3, 4 years older than I was. I don't remember, maybe more than that. But like he kind of had his own network of people that he went to school with that were kind of doing their thing, and then I had a few people that were younger than me. So between those little crowds, because you got to think back then, really that was like right at the start of the era of the SoundCloud rappers and all that stuff. That was back like 2008, 2009 when him and I really first like started hardcore doing it like that. But yeah, so at that time, I think we did one show here in Hoptown at the Princess, and that was insane what we paid to do that show, and it did pretty decent. But at that time, we were more focused on just recording a bunch of shit, man.
Mm, I understand that. Sometimes the fun part is recording, and then all the other parts are not that fun.
Yep. And at the time, man, like we didn't really know much about booking shows, and we were trying to learn as we go. Like I know himself, he was still learning all the ins and outs as far as the engineering side of that. Because I've never, I tell people all the time, I'm no engineer. I record and I can do enough to make it sound okay to where I can send the rough mix off to somebody and be like, all right, here's your guideline, and here's my vocals. But other than that, I don't want to learn how to do that. I know that sounds kind of arrogant, but that's that part where we were talking about earlier where it's not so much fun anymore. Like I don't enjoy that aspect to a point. So he always handled that side
I
of it as
mean,
well.
I just want to point out, I fucking hate mixing.
Yeah.
Like, by virtue of sheer necessity, I've learned the basics of how to not sound like absolute trash because, like, a de-esser is a powerful thing. And,
Yeah.
like, you gotta know a little one, too, but I don't know why everyone's obsessed with trying to do everything. That's one of the most baffling things to me. Like, I know a lot of people who, like, kind of also might feel like it sounds arrogant or something, but I'm like, nah, I know I don't want to do that. Like,
Yeah.
I
Like
know I need to know enough to talk to engineers so they know I know enough to talk to them.
Yeah, like my guy I use over in Enigmatic, man, my dude Hermian, he showed me a few tips and stuff because when I told him first when he started engineering my stuff, I was like, man, I know enough. Like I know enough. I can send you when I send you the stuff. They're all titled right. They'll be in the right places where you need stuff like that. But like, I don't. I'll take your tips and stuff, but like, I don't want to learn that. It's not fun to me, at that point, like, because it's taking away from what I'm trying to do, if that makes sense. So yeah, I'm right there with you.
On the other hand, I do think that if you're going to take this route, you then requires you homies who know how to do this shit, and that is
Oh
gonna
yeah.
require you money, time, relation, something. You gonna pay
Oh
in
yeah.
some way.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. You got to pay to play, but when you build that's the thing. Like I like when my dudes over at Enigmatic, Aaron, and all them guys, man. I found a bunch of dudes who have the same vision, that we all do. It's like, yes, everybody needs to do their own thing and kind of do their own thing, but everybody come together and and network, and not even just with those guys, but like stuff I'm doing outside of that. If we all support each other, there's no reason why we all can't make enough noise. I'm not saying we'll all get rich. I mean, obviously that's the goal and stuff, but at the end of the day, man, if this is really the route you go and doing music stuff, if we just support each other, that makes enough noise to make other people pay attention. And
Maybe we all need to just change the goalpost. I think a lot of people know what I mean. It because if you listen to everything you're saying, I think everybody agrees until we get to the get rich part. I don't know if I care about getting rich. I want to make what I make off of art.
yeah,
That's enough,
yeah,
bro. If I made what I made off of art, holy shit, yo, dude, you couldn't touch me. You couldn't touch my ego in a sense because it would be too like I achieved everything just
yeah,
making what I
and
make
that's
off
the
of
thing,
art.
man.